The longest ban list you'll ever read, combined with an insane setting. Part 1. A little introduction is needed. I initially posted the story on an Italian forum under the topic, The Stupidest DM You Ever Had. But a friend of mine asked me to post here, in RPG horror stories. First things first, I should apologize in advance for my bad English, as this is the first time I'm writing such a lengthy text in a foreign language. So please excuse any error in syntax or grammar. And speaking about lengthy, buckle your seats, because this is a long story. Like so long that I had to divide it in chapters. No kidding, we're talking 1 hour or more read. The reason for such wordiness is because this was not written straight away, but rather in small fragments along the months of this delirious campaign. So here it is, the almost word-by-word translation from the original post. After my upteenth attempt to play a D&D campaign gone dead because the usual absentee players, I was able to find a group of players in my city thanks to some unforeseen miracle. And by miracle, I mean a divine intervention from an unnamed deity who decided to relentlessly punish me in this earthly realm. I do not believe in reincarnation, but if that's actually true after enduring this campaign, I will be reborn in a well-hung billionaire with wings. By getting in touch, I learned this is a Pathfinder group who came to be from the union of other players who, just like me, had to deal with various constantly defect sessions out of the blue. Thinking back about it, I can safely say the frequency and the punctuality of the group, both players and DM, was a huge step forward for me. It was the only step forward for me. But let's go in order. I would have liked a D&D 3.5 campaign, but they played Pathfinder, 1st edition. Not a problem. I already knew most of the rules/differences because in my many years of DMing, I considered switching game systems. And I also allowed in one of my campaigns one of my players to use a gunslinger in the 3.5. The DM, however, warned me there would be a few modifications to the core rules, along with homebrewing, banning, and restrictions to avoid any possibility to break the game. In my hearing that, I was already growing the aforementioned pair of wings. You see, the campaign was set in our world, around 1850 in England. But magic exists. Creatures like demons, werewolves, and vampires are seen as legendary beings, and if they really existed in the past, they are now long extinct. The magic is also considered stuff of legends, and if you believed in magic in the modern world of 1850, you're considered insane. But in the same setting, there are also all the races from the core rulebook. Yet the world is a copy-pasted version of the 1850s, despite the fact that even a single one of those elements would have drastically changed history. But don't worry, we will come back on the setting later. TLDR, after a few one-shot adventures that would task even the most hardened players, we join a supposedly low-magic, horror investigative campaign, with one of the most absurd, lengthy, and limited banning/restriction lists applied to our characters, with the main gimmick of the campaign being so insane that it would make the psychiatrist quit his career. When we finally begin the actual campaign in a setting so incoherent that even a flimsy question from the players would make the very foundations of this world tremble, the constant barrage of insanities and nonsensical happenings is only ever briefly interrupted by the amateurish rules mistakes done by the DM. The sheer amount of limitations and restrictions applied to the characters' builds, along with incorrect ruling, maddening house rules, and the adamant refusal of the DM to let our characters progress to level 2 slowly but steadily corrupts the game. In an exponential implosion process that finally culminates in a literally explosive finale. If you're into stories where an army of goblins fired from a cannon in the less stupidest thing you will witness, this is the right campaign for you. Assuming your asylum allows tabletop games, of course. Chapter 1. Prelude to Disaster. At first, we did some one-shot adventures with pre-generated characters, just to know each other a little more. After a few weeks, we created the characters, and we then began the actual campaign. However, from those one-shots alone, I should have foreseen the impending doom awaiting us, but my craving for playing clouded my judgment. From those various one-shots, set in average fantasy worlds, I witnessed firsthand aberrant scenes already deserving of this topic. So just for your enjoyment, the appetizer. Other players choose a pre-generated character, but they get no clue on what those characters can actually do. For instance, the one who picked the druid had no idea what any of his spells do, how his wild shape works, or anything at all about the animal companion. Everyone, DM included, already knew how to play and know the rules. Even more, they played for years. However, when my character used the total defense action, everyone stared at me as if I just swore during the Angelus. Apparently, no one had the smallest clue that this option existed in the core rulebook. The DM even asked me if I just made it up on the spot. The DM had a really twisted idea of the concept of fun. When the druid casted an Ice Storm spell on 15 fire things, the DM had the players roll 3d6 of bludgeoning and the 2d6 of cold damage individually for each creature, opposed to the saving throws, of course, where anyone else would have rolled 5d6 with 2 different colors to differentiate the cold damage ones. Our DM stopped the game for 20 minutes so the player could roll a grand total of 75 dice, noting the damage for each creature, the vast majority of which, by the way, were instantly killed anyways, because those monsters, totally not created on the spot, had like 8 HP each. When I asked why he didn't just tell the player to roll once for everyone, like any other DM would have, and like the rulebook says, he answered me, and I quote, "But this is more fun." I was so blown away that I forgot to mention him that Ice Storm has no saving throws. In that same occasion, the DM told the druid player that the 2d6 of cold damage are non-lethal damage. I pointed out that's not the case. The spell texts don't say so, but the DM informed me that all cold damage in Pathfinder is classified as non-lethal. Really, is there such a difference between 3.5 and Pathfinder? I naively ask. The DM points me to page 442 of the core rulebook, where it says that cold and exposure deal non-lethal damage to the victim, which means the damage you get if you happen to be half naked in the middle of a snowstorm, and clearly not referring to generic spells in effect. As, on the other hand, you would have guessed by noticing the paragraph about cold dangers on page 442 is under the environmental rules chapter. Trust me, this part was even worse in Italian, because the terms get translated completely different. Speaking about rules, other players rely fully on the DM, and the latter looks for confirmations on the site Galorian. Italian site mainly about Pathfinder, put it simply, is one of those who, in case of any doubt regarding the rules, instead of opening the rulebooks, he prefers to ask on an internet forum. What could possibly go wrong? Players and DM are happy that in Pathfinder there is no bullcrap about critical confirm roll. I pointed out that is not the case, and I am indeed even more surprised, compared to 3.5, there are so many abilities that increase the confirmation roll, including the ones on 3 out of 4 pre-generated sheets we were using in that moment. Once again, room temperature dropped. When our characters fail the perception roll, the DM, instead of just saying, "Your character doesn't see X," he prefers to dedicate detailed descriptions on how your ranger was blinded by a flash emanating from a dropped sword nearby, or how your gnome bard got suddenly dust in his eyes, and so on. Needless to say, such wordiness vanishes the moment you roll that natural 20 on perception. The DM didn't know what taking 10 and taking 20 means. After showing him the page that describes it, he will be convinced that if my character takes 10 on a survival check, he will obtain an end result of 10, even if he has +8 to said check. Moreover, it will take hours to perform, because why not? The DM improvises everything. Well, for some one-shots, it's not really an issue, and to be fair, he warned us in advance about that. But when he started to improvise deadly saves or die traps with a saving throw of 25, it's a bit bothersome, especially at level 7. You may think that what you just read was complete madness, but it turns out that was actually happy fun time, as the real insanity was about to begin. First off, I should say that due to OP not being fluent in English, it was a tad bit hard to read and follow along as I read. So I am asking in the comments if you would like me to continue. This is only chapter 1, and I must say that it continues on to 2 more posts. Chapter 1 wasn't even the only chapter in the first part. I haven't read the full post yet, as it is very long, and I didn't want to continue unless you all showed interest in hearing the rest. There was quite a few times reading where I just think that there was a bit of misunderstanding from the OP coming from 3.5 D&D to 1st edition Pathfinder. They are vastly different, at least I think, in most of their mechanics. Pathfinder does seem to be a bit more confusing, but the DM doing detailed description for becoming blind, I don't know why that was part of the problems to me. I think it's a good move. It immerses the players more into it rather than making it feel like a video game, which as of right now, if I'm honest, the D&D game that I'm playing in kind of does feel like that because we mainly play on Roll20 and the DM is very new. Well, we're all new except for one of the players. I don't know what else to say, as most of it didn't seem bad and was bad communication or confusion on all sides. But maybe it is bad and I'm just getting confused by the post. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you want me to continue on this story. And I'll see you next time. Bye.